Fantastic. So we are going to start. Thank you so much for coming along this evening. As I say, if you're interested in learning more about forensic and criminal psychology, you're definitely in the right arena. And I've got some material to show you guys this evening that maybe you haven't before, largely because I'm a reader at an American state university. And I get access to the Centre for the investigation and research into serial killers. So unless you're actually a reader there, you probably haven't seen that material before. And I've got to say, I've spent the last 2 months researching that in preparation, not only for this evening, but also for the event that we're going to be running in September. What would be quite nice is I want to introduce my wife, Kate. You see Catherine Gaskins there. She is monitoring the chat box for us, and I'm also going to give you some information. Just to let you know, it's being recorded, so people that can't make it this evening, they will be getting a copy of this, as indeed you will as well. Okay, so let's start. As I say, it's really, really good to see you guys. I just want to make sure I can see one or two of you. That's really, really good. So some of you probably would have heard that music before. I'm going to introduce myself now. My name is Steve Gaskin. I had the absolute privilege of being a Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police Service for nearly 30 years. That is my background, my main background. I'm also an advisor to BBC Silent Witness, and many of you would have seen Line of Duty, and we did some work for that programme. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management, and the material that I use is in terms of showing other people, particularly young people, forensic psychology. And that is a real big passion of mine, and I lecture part-time at City University in London. Can I just say, before we go any further, a real warm welcome to people from outside of the United Kingdom. It's very difficult to come here, but I know that I've got a lot of people from far afield, so thanks for tuning in. I'm also a forensic psychologist. It's something that, as a senior investigating officer in the police service, an SIO, and a forensic psychologist, when I put those two together, it was like the perfect storm, and I learned absolutely loads. And I'm going to impart some of that to you this evening. I'm also a qualified teacher. So some of the cases that I've been involved in, some of you know this, is one of the most interesting was the Sultan of Brunei, and he was being blackmailed, one of the richest men in the world at the time, before Mr. Gates came along and Jeff Bezos, and we managed to get an undercover police officer into that case, and it came to a happy conclusion. Long time ago, I got involved in arresting a guy called Johnny Rotten, or Johnny Linden, from the Sex Pistols. There we go. Probably one of the most gruesome sights I've seen is Hyde Park bombing in the mid 80s. I was first on scene to that, and that was quite distressing, to say the least. The reason I'm going to bring some authenticity to this is I've had dealings with two extremely infamous serial killers. The first one, a more recent one, was being Levi Belfield. Literally the day after I got promoted to DCI, I had to cover the whole of southwest London, and that's where he struck for the first time. That wasn't a murder, mercifully, but that was still striking a young woman, a blonde-haired woman, over the head with a brick. Terrible case. And the reason I became a detective is I was on my work experience with the CID when a guy called Archibald Hall, he was a butler up in Knightsbridge, he killed 5 of his charges. and I didn't really go back to the uniform branch after that. I became a career detective, which I would recommend to everyone. Just for a bit of fun at the moment, murder isn't fun, and can I just say that this is meant to just be a delving into why it is that some people, particularly serial killers, are prepared to take multiple lives. Myself and 2 other DCIs have put together 4 seemingly unconnected murders, 2 in the East End of London and 2 in the London Borough of Hounslow. And that is a really interesting case. One's linked by DNA, and we're hoping that there may well be an arrest from that. So that's an outstanding serial killer, and that will come into context when you see the amount of serial killers that this country has experienced. What we're looking at in September. So these are the topics, the 5 topics that I've picked. So really, we're just going to have a forward look to September, and that is the 14th and 21st of September when we'll be running this little course. So, you know, why should you come on it? That's the question I would ask myself. Well, we're going to discuss what is criminal and forensic psychology, and there was disagreements left, right and centre, so it's important we understand that. We'll have a quick discussion. We'll then look at violent offenders. You know, you may have seen football matches, you may hear of reports. There's that awful case, Wayne Couzens, the police officer that's pleaded guilty to murder, is looking at the psychology behind violent offenders, assault and homicide, and looking at the police response to that. In other words, if I took you guys away from this and put you on into an incident room, into a major incident room, would you fare as well as police officers? And there's some research around that I want to talk to you about. Predatory criminals. You know, when I was in the police service, I worked with a guy that got a gong. He was a member of the British Empire for looking at predatory behaviour, particularly stalking. So we've got him. He's going to be talking to us. So one of the leading experts, the world's leading experts. The other thing is there is a lot of controversy. There's a lot of misinformation around lies and lie detecting and credibility. We all think, I'm just waving to one of a little girl here. We all think we're good at detecting lies. There is a raft of information about, you know, if I'm talking to someone and I avert their gaze, it must mean I'm lying. If I do that, it means I'm lying. But what's going to, you guys, and I'm going to put it into a consumable, fun format, is looking at the research and not what we suspect or what we think. And then we're going to look at mental disorders and crime. And that goes right the way back to Roman times. So we're going to look at, why is it that someone's prosecuted? Why aren't they, you know, are they sent to Rampton, Ashworth or Broadmoor? So that's what we're going to look at. There was like 30 different topics that I had in mind, and these are the ones I want to start off with. You will get a certificate of attendance. You might think, what on earth do I want one of those for? But I know that there's a lot of people here considering going to university, and I've got some younger students. If you've got one of these, that shows at least you've got an interest in it. So how can I get involved, either this evening or during the 14th or 21st? Discussion. Yeah, we'll have a discussion. We will use the chat box, of course. We will discuss in small teams. If you tell me that you don't want to discuss in a small team, that's absolutely fine if you're comfortable with that. There's some videos to watch. We'll have some polls as well, so we can see what you're taking in, any questions that you want to ask. And in fact, I'm going to do a poll towards the end of this event this evening. I'm very, very proud of this, and I know that a lot of our VIP true crime members that are on this evening have really positively commented on this. Kate will now put up our resources into the chat box, which is thecrimelab.co.uk/resources. there is an absolute shed load of resources there for you to have a look at. They're absolutely free. It ranges from doing a psychopath test on yourself right the way through to, I don't know, serial killers, psychopaths and everything. So that is, whether you go on to the course in September, that is there for you. So what we're going to do now, and this is, I suppose, really, a lot of you come on here, you want to ask the question why. That was really, really important to me with all murder cases, but it's not until recently, up until 2010, that there was actually an index along or around a centre for the study and research of serial killers. So what I want to do this evening is I want everyone that's on this evening to get the most accurate information that has been broadcast. This has not been broadcast before. And do you know what? One of the reasons I joined, not only to research, was to come along and to be able to tell you guys about this. I'll talk about my experiences with serial killers, if need be. Levi Belfield is serving a whole life sentence, which means it's highly unlikely that he's due to come out. And I've heard that the Crown Prosecution Service are thinking of trying him for 3 other offences, including the one that I mentioned at the beginning. And also, the information that you're going to get is true. It's the true information. There's a lot of speculation, isn't there, around stuff. And one thing that forensic and criminal psychologists are good at is measuring things. But of course, that's statistics, and there's a lot of controversy and conjecture around that. So I really want to give you, starting right now, some of the facts around serial killers to better inform you. So these are the things that we want to do: is who, why, what, how, when. Questions. I used to ask my colleagues so many questions during a murder inquiry, and can I tell you straight away, most of them were solved by younger members of the team. I think as a DCI, I only came up with 1 or 2 things. So these are the questions you need to be constantly asking. So we're just going to have a look at this, and literally it's in 15 minutes. I could spend hours, I would like to spend hours and hours talking to you about this. Is how much is actually known about serial killers. We're then going to look at the frequency, in other words, what is the state of the problem. We're going to look at the worst countries, and Kate and I were having a discussion around this, and I think this will surprise you. We're then going to look at gender differences, age differences, and intelligence. In other words, IQ. And again, I'm going to be debunking the theory that people have around intelligence. Okay, so let's start looking at this. So the first thing we're going to look at is the data. So the stuff I'm going to be showing you is bang up to date. As from the 25th of June, the database contained information on 5,334 serial killers from the US and other countries across the planet. And also, you know, nearly, or coming up to 15,000 victims. And that is my criminological interest, and that is victimology. You can see here already there's a dispute between criminologists in Europe and the FBI, and that is over here. Criminologists generally say that a serial killer, and they agree that a serial killer is someone that has killed at least 3 people over a period of 3 weeks or more, whereas the FBI definition is different, and that is the unlawful killing of 2 or more people by the same offenders in separate events. So it's slightly different. So when we talk tonight about serial killers, just have file in the back of your minds that this is the thing we're looking at. So 100, and this is, by the way, this is interactive. This is not going to be me blowing away. 115 countries had at least 1 identified serial killer. But what I want you to do is to drop into the chat box or introspectively think, what do you think are the top 5 countries for serial killers since since the database started in 2010. But what it was doing is it was taking data from the 30s onwards. So just drop that into the chat box, and have a quick we'll have a quick look at that. What I like, you know, it's like a lot of when you're interacting with people, is I've asked you the question, and the chances are that most of you will come up with the right answers. So here we go, a bit of interaction there. 2/3, if you don't mind, of the identified serial killers are, unsurprisingly, from the US. I have a theory or a notion that a lot of that is to do with landmass. Yeah. So if you look at the biggest states in the United States, most of the serial killings happen in the big states, Florida being one of the top ones. So the second is England. I was shocked when I was doing this research. 176 serial killers we have had, but in comparison to the US, you could do a ratio here, just dividing 361 by 176. Japan is also high with 137, South Africa 123, India 121, and Canada. So of course the next question is what are the best countries, because maybe I want to move there. But I was very skeptical about the data, because if you look at the size of population in some of the countries that claim to have the lowest ones and the amount of serial killers, I would challenge the data. One of the lowest ones is supposed to be Brazil and China. So I would actually challenge that academically. Serial killings, I hope we're all pleased to know, are on the decline. Why is that? Why is it that serial killers are on the decline, or serial killings?
Do you think it's because of DNA?
Yeah, could I ask you very kindly just to drop that into the chat box for us? Yeah. So yeah, if you want to put that into the chat box, or just think that through. Christina, I have to say before we go into that, that is, can I just tell you that as I was lucky enough to see the development of DNA whilst I was in the police service, and it didn't come back to haunt me after I'd retired. I got a knock on the door from Scotland Yard's cold case unit, and a serious sexual offence that myself and my colleagues have been investigated had been solved. And so, yeah, and that particular case could have easily gone one step further and turned into a murder case. The first one is the increase in technology, and you're absolutely right, Christina, there is particularly with DNA. It doesn't serve as a deterrent, but again, I haven't got time to go into this, but in the main course is serial killers are either organized or disorganized, and that tells us so much, particularly when we look at offender profiling, which is one of my most enjoyable subjects that I've studied. The other thing is if I decide that I want to bump Kate off and I'm going to poison her, if I go down to the local shop and buy something, there's chances are there might be all sorts of things. Am I paying on my phone? So the increase in technology is good. This is what I love. I love the United States. I don't know what an Anglophile is, someone that loves England. I don't know what it is for the States, but you guys there with your parole, I tell you, you know, and over here we have a prison population or establishment of 83,000 places. As at this morning when I looked, there's 86,000 people we've got incarcerated, and in the US it's closer to 1 million people. But you're much stricter on parole, and we're becoming a lot stricter. And so therefore it's a small amount of people that are serial killers. So if they're incarcerated for longer, that means that there should be less. The next one is the decline started around the 80s, and that is because there's a decrease in high risk targets. Do you know, when I was 16, 17, 18, I was hitchhiking all around Europe. You know, I would have a fit if my children had done that. But, you know, there was then a lot of army personnel going around, people walking to school. So a lot of these high-risk targets have diminished. And the last one is CCTV. In the United Kingdom, we enjoy, if that's the right word, the greatest surveillance of CCTV cameras than any other country in the world. And because I've got a new puppy that some of you have seen, I've actually put a doorbell on there with a camera on the front and a camera on the back. So that's kind of added to it. So that is why, 4 reasons why they're on the decline. Looking at gender, you know, and this in itself is a really interesting study. Why is it that 89% of all serial killers are men and only 11% are women? What is it? And we discussed this at university many years ago. What is it that men can learn from women? But that subject, if someone wants to submit a PhD to me, I'll get it marked by Cambridge University. But let's have a look at some of these. Yeah, let's just have a look at some of these here. Looking at the differences. So males. The primary motive, ladies and gents, for serial killing is enjoyment. Those of you that have been with me before, we looked at a book by Holmes and DeBurger called Serial Killing, and we broke that down into missionary, visionary, and a couple of others. But for males, the primary motive is enjoyment. How do we know that, by the way? The reason being is that all of these cases have been pulled apart and all the components have been filed away, so we know that. Secondly, they tend either to shoot or strangle their victims. That is different in the United Kingdom. We all know our most common choice of weapon is a knife, a sharp-bladed instrument, as we were so gently reminded by the former president, Mr. Trump. Men are more likely to torture and mutilate. Please excuse me, but this has to be realistic. And they tend to go for female victims. Now, and the victims tend not to be known. Guys, I did a gig, I did a thing looking at extreme psychopaths and serial killers. And what I tried to do was to put across the notion that actually men and women are separated from when we go back when we were cave people. In other words, the men are the hunter-gatherers and they're prepared to travel, whereas the females they're hunters, whereas females are gatherers. And that behavior is still reflected in 2021. Female, their primary motive is financial gain. Financial gain. Do you know, when I was in the US, I went to church and I met this couple, and afterwards my friend said to me, do you know who that couple was? I had no idea. She arranged to have her husband bumped off by a hitman, and the FBI heard about it and again got an undercover police officer in there, and she was so that she could claim his life assurance policy. But so she went to jail for some 15 years. And when they came back, they got married and they were reunited. Most bizarre case. Tend to poison victims, a real favorite thing. And in a few weeks' time, with our VIP true crime group, we're going to be looking at poisoning of victims. Listen to this. They tend to kill more children and more infants. And over here, certainly over the last 40 to 50 years, when you look at female serial killers, there is only a handful. And notably, one's Beverly Eilish, fairly recently, suffering from Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, presenting babies that she'd given insulin to, and also the infamous Myra Hindley. And we've also got a case going through the British courts at the moment, which is similar to Beverly Eilish in some ways. Victims are known, either known or family members. So I've got to say, I was, you know, this is really interesting stuff, and it comes from a very well tended and nurtured database. So let's look at H. age. A sample group within the database, 4887 serial killers, 28 at the start of a sequence, and 33 and a half at the end. Guys, I said, and I've said this before, as a senior investigating officer, I would have had to, but I would have found that mentally very difficult to cope as an SIO, senior investigating officer, knowing that I've got to spend that amount of time. In the UK, the distance between the first one and the last one is a lot less. Listen to this. According to the database, I know exactly the youngest is 6 years of age. So I've been drilling into that. It's a boy that bumped off his mum, and he was kept in like secure care, and came out and bumped his dad off as well. So that was kind of a serial killing there. And the oldest 72. What gets in the mind of a 72-year-old and a 6-year-old to start that? Females tend to be 4 years older than males in terms of age. The higher number of kills, the older the serial killer. The higher number of kills, the older the serial killer. I don't know about you guys, I'm being thundered out as I'm talking about serial killers. We've got extreme thunder here in the east of England. Now, this IQ, look at this. Before I do this, don't put this in the chat box, but just think through this question. Do you believe that serial killers are A, highly organized, and B, are very clever or intelligent? When we're looking at this IQ, intelligence quotient, one of the benchmarks for measuring intelligence. So this was a much lesser group, 316 serial killers only. So you need to be careful with small sample groups. Do you know, I watch an advert on the TV and it's for oil of Olay. It's a woman's product for moisturizer. And it says 75 people out of, 35 people out of a group of 300 agreed that it was a good product. So what? Anyway, they use that as a stat. The population generally, and you need to be careful with this because you need to go over the whole of the world, has got an IQ between 85 and 115. The average IQ of a serial killer with this data is 92. The two people that I knew, Belfield, his IQ was nowhere near that, nor was the IQ of Archibald Hall, the butler that killed 5 of his charges. In general, the higher the number of kills, the higher the IQ. They don't want to get caught, do they? They don't want to get caught. Killers who, so if we go back to this, the average IQ of serial killers is 92. Based on 316 people, that debunks the theory, doesn't it, on this sample group, that actually serial killers are very, very intelligent. Killers who bludgeon their victims have a lower IQ than those who strangle. Can I tell you that after consuming all of this, it is like, I don't know, winning an Olympic gold medal for me, because it makes my offender profiling study a lot easier. Because with offender profiling, I'm looking at the psychological markers left at crime scene as opposed to the forensic evidence. So it's really, really interesting. Now, this is what is the lowest IQ in the US where that's bad English there, where someone cannot be executed. So what do you think the lowest IQ is? The answer, so you can imagine that if I was defending someone in the US for a capital offence, that'd be the first thing I'd be doing, is getting a psychologist to measure that person's IQ. But there again, if I knew that I was going to be executed, I'd be trying to fool that test in some way. So it's 70. What other aspects can tell us about the true nature of serial killers? What I've done is I've just taken a small cluster that I thought would be interesting for you guys, but there's there's loads more that we could look at from that database or start collecting data to make us better informed. I'm going to click through this because we're coming to the back end of this. First one is childhood. Yeah, there is an absolute danger with murder investigation serial killers where there's like this medico-legal search into someone's background to look for a trigger to decide or to find out why someone has murdered someone or committed serial offences. Ladies and gents, that is a dangerous way of looking at it, because quite often there is absolutely no trigger at all. And whilst it is an extremely sad offence, Wayne Couzens, by the way, guys, is a Metropolitan Police officer that has just pleaded guilty to a horrific murder. But what I'm interested in, amongst besides the policey things, is what would possess someone to do that. Childhood. Victim selection. Yeah, again, why does someone go for a particular homogenous group? Levi Belfield went for young blonde women. No one knows why. Because in all cases like this, there is not really in the United Kingdom a proper follow-up to find out the question why. And certainly in Harold Shipman case, one of the biggest serial killers, a medical professional, a doctor, he refused to speak to anyone. So we really don't know why he did it. Ethnicity is something as well to look at, and also the methodology of killing. Those are just 4 things, but we could look at a lot more. So that is a quick run through to the data, but I don't know whether that surprised some of you guys. It certainly surprised me, some of these things. But one of the things I did do when I was in the police service with a group of other people was we got all of our murder cases that are recorded electronically. We came up with a methodology to dump all of those to a central database. So we've now got some very, very clever criminal analysts that can start making sense of the data. And of course, that's fed in to the States. Okay, so what do you need to do now? That is just a short preview as to what we're doing. What I'm going to show you is just looking at the benefits. So first of all, you will get over 4 hours of live events. If you book before the end of this month, and that is you've got about 72 hours, maybe slightly longer, we're going to give you a thing called Inside the Mind of a Murderer. And that looks at the deeper psychology around base aggression and violence, the nature-nurture argument. It will also look at offender profiling, and I will talk to you about some very famous, and you can do your own profile. You can also look at the murky world of psychopaths and one other around British serial killers, the nature of British serial killers. You get access to all our online material. You're going to get that anyway, and you will get a certificate of attendance, and you're going to get an expert presenter or presenters. The cost of that for September is £40. This is how you access it. It's dead easy. This is our website. You go onto our shop. This will come up. Make sure you look at the tab there on the top for the September one. All you do is you just click the checkout there and you go for it. Okay, so you should get a whole 8 hours of material. Every single person that comes on to that, you will get a copy of the recording. So if you miss it, or in one case, I was being attacked by a puppy whilst I was doing my job. If that happens to you or your kids are crying, you know that you're going to get a copy of it. Also, it'd be remiss of me not to say we have a VIP True Crime membership that spans the globe now, which is great. And I've got some very, very loyal customers that I love serving. You can join that very, very easily by going, it's £15 a month. These are some of the things that we've done already. This is coming up in the fast lane in the next couple of months. cases under the microscope, contact trace evidence, children who kill, is your boss a psychopath? That is really useful, because once you know that, you can then also start using the material from that to kind of start working other people out. Hidden killer, forensics and poisoning. All of these come from all the talks that I do come from my VIP True Crime members. They tell me what they want to hear and I deliver it, not what they want to hear. And for the second year running, we had 450 people last year. We've got a true crime festival. Now, I'm going to keep you up to date with these by email. If you don't want to hear from me, absolutely understand that, but we will keep you up to date. And that was an absolute hit last year. Our keynote speaker is a former detective sergeant that was poisoned in Salisbury with Novichok when he was investigating poisoning. So he's our keynote. So just to remind you, this is what you're going to get. Main ones are this one Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at. It'd be absolutely great to see you there. But what I would like to do is, just before we finish, could you indulge me 1 minute? I've got a poll which I'm going to put up now. I just need to know, because we've already got a lot of customers that have paid for this. I just want to make sure that I hit the mark. So I've just launched this poll and it just says, where are you at with forensic and criminal psychology? It's completely anonymous. If you fill that in, it would be absolutely brilliant, because I will know where to pitch it. That's not to say that if you're doing a doctorate, I'm going to pitch it that high if you're doing a PhD, but I think I'm getting a nice little bar chart out now, which is really, really useful for me. So thank you very much for that. So most of you are saying some knowledge, which is good, some knowledge, a novice, undergrad. I really, really love working with undergrads, and I just hope that it will add something to you. Yeah, cool. So I think really it's great to see there's loads of people that I wish to say a thank you to. It's great to see people from a long, long way away. Just want to give a shout out to one of our best customers that was at a certain place in Battersea. So I'm not going to embarrass her. And also I am going to say to Sarah McCarthy, you know what I'm going to say. Thank you so much for suggesting this. So I've embarrassed her now. But I've run over by a few minutes, but if you want to ask us any questions, do feel free to do so. Cool. Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for the comments you're making. Just remember, I want to give you absolute maximum value for this. So in order to qualify for that, I really want to give you Inside the Mind of a Murderer, those four extra things for you. That would be really, really good. I always finish this off. Nothing's changed. I always finish off this way. Please, please look after yourselves and those that you love, you know, and if you are scientists, and there's one or two of you here, this thing ain't going away too quickly. So look after yourselves, and thank you so much. I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys in September. Thank you very much for tuning in. Kate, thank you so much for assisting me this evening. So very, very good night, or whatever time it is in your jurisdiction. Yeah, the recording, this is being recorded. All of you are going to get a recording. Absolutely no probs. Maybe not this evening, but you'll certainly be getting it tomorrow. So I wish you cheerio, and thanks so much for listening.